Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Miller, and you've reached Never Not Here. And life tends to go up and down, you know, like our energy levels and our intentions. And there's a lot of movement in how we see life. And the more we cut it loose, the more it has a possibility to move. And so kind of later in the summer, I was thinking something's probably going to change, and I think something will, you know. Now I'm feeling kind of on an upsurge, and so maybe I'm getting kind of lightheaded, but we'll find out. So I think I want to say a couple of things, because some of the things we talk about, one, they call it Advaita, and there's a kind of a traditional Vedanta teaching, and I guess you all know that's kind of like an Eastern philosophy or an Eastern experiential philosophy or a teaching that comes a lot from India. And I don't really know where it all comes from. Maybe let's just use a word like Upanishads or something like that. And I think the traditional Advaita acknowledges three points of view. And I'm not saying these are real places or there's anything real, or, I mean, I don't know about them, but just to state them, one is called empirical point of view, one is the illusory point of view, and one is the absolute point of view. So empirical just means like conventional wisdom. What you see is what you get. Here I am, there you are. You know, we got our bills to pay, and it's just like, that's a lot of points of view, you know, and we think that the faster we go, the better we'll go, you know, we'll be doing. And that's kind of like empirical. It just kind of like the evidence points that way. And then sometimes something comes over us, and that empirical view sometimes loses its structure, and it's kind of going in and out. And that's what they're calling in traditional Vedanta illusory view, and we don't really know what's happening there. That's the land of spiritual experiences, and you know, somehow the illusion of progress, that we're getting somewhere and we're learning something, and then I guess we're just proposing that there's a absolute view, and there must be something here, you know. And if we ever knew it, that would be absolute, you know. And sometimes we get people sharing from all those different 3 points, and we get, you know, apparent points, and we get people, of course, people are receiving from all those 3 points too, and people that have real sharp insight and maybe have had glimpses of whatever could be called absolute, maybe they don't like it when we're talking empirical. And people from the absolute think, you know, that maybe we should just make it as simple as possible. And tonight we're with somebody from Australia that I think likes the simple route. And so please help me welcome Gilbert Schultz. Hi, Gilbert.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for having me on your program.
You can see I could get pretty complicated, right? But I didn't make it all up. You know? Somebody told me about...
No, that's cool.
Yeah, somebody told me about there's 3 points of view. And at first I kind of like thought, oh, isn't that too complicated? And can't we go for the gusto? Let's just go straight to the home base, you know, let's make a home run. But I don't think that most people really make home runs, you know. I mean, there's an appearance that there's a gradual unfolding of understanding, if even understanding is important.
Well, that's the nature of the manifestation, is this eternal unfolding of apparent change. And you mentioned Advaita Vedanta, and a lot of people sort of divide it into two, the traditional and what they now coin as the neo-Advaita. But it's really the mind that's dividing Advaita, which is one without a second. And it's interesting, I understand the words Advaita Vedanta in a very simple way. Vedanta means the end of the Vedas, and the Vedas is a song. So at the end of a song, anyone who's ever belonged to a choir, they know that at the end of the song, there's the most blissful silence, unless you've got an audience going crazy. But when you're practicing in a choir, there's a beautiful experience at the end of the song. And that's where Advaita is. The oneness of everything is very, very obvious in that moment. And it's interesting, in the flamenco tradition, flamenco music, they have a word called duende, which is when the musicians and the dancers are in full flight. There's a moment where everything just gels. And I think a lot of musicians experience this. It's when everything, it's like you're not doing anything anymore. It's just happening, and it's perfect. And it's interesting, I don't know what duende translates into English really, but du obviously means two. Ende to me suggests the end of two. So the end of two-ness is obviously oneness. The mind is dualistic, and therefore by using the mind you can't attain non-duality. Nobody ever attained non-duality. Nobody ever became one with oneness. It only in appearance that appears to happen. So, people talk about the absolute point of view and these other points of view. And what we don't realize is that the actual activity of seeing, which is there prior to perception, prior to whatever the mind translates, labels things and tells a story, that seeing, that pure naked seeing, is happening with every sentient being. And it doesn't belong to the pattern of energy called a body or a mind. It's actually everywhere.
Say a little bit more about the difference between seeing and perception, because that could be a confusion.
Yeah, sure. Well, we perceive many things that don't exist. I'll tell you a short story. There's a man runs out of petrol in his car on a country road, and he decides he'll walk. He knows there's a town not too far away, so he'll walk up there and hope that the petrol station is open. I think you call them gas stations.
Right.
So he's walking, and it's a dark night, a bit of moonlight around, and as he's walking along the country road, he sees two trees on the crest of the hill, and he sees a man next to the trees. The wind's blowing a little bit, and he's a little bit concerned, and then he thinks he sees the man's got a gun. So he's getting a bit worried, and it looks like he's starting to come down the hill. Then a car comes around the bend, and the headlights shine on 3 trees. No man. Now, our friend that we're talking about perceived 2 trees and a man, but what he was seeing was 3 trees. Or what was appearing in the pure seeing was 3 trees. So the mind translates from memory. If you'd never seen a man before, you wouldn't see a tree looking like a man. You'd just see shapes. So the mind uses memory to label things. It's like when you recognize something. Say you walk around the corner of a street and there's an elephant there. You instantly know what it is, and the label comes up afterwards. So you don't need the label. In fact, God asked Adam, if we talk about the Bible, God asked Adam to name all the animals because they didn't have names. Animals, trees, birds, nature doesn't have names. Things don't come into existence with labels hanging off them. We give names to things. Then we create a problem with the story, or not. So pure seeing is the activity of knowing, which is, it's not something you acquire. You've already got it. You are that seeing. You are that knowing. You cannot divorce yourself from the seeing or the knowing. If you look around the room, you can see objects, walls and curtains and things, or whatever is in the room. And you cannot separate anything that's appearing in the seeing from the activity of seeing. But it appears that the mind does this. Siddhartha Rameshwar was Nisargadatta's guru, and he said something very profound. He said, duality is due to the seer and the seen. Now, the seer is a point of reference. I am the seer, which is the mind actually telling a story about being somebody who's seeing something. The seen is a pseudo object that's isolated from what's appearing in the seeing, and I say, I see the chair. But actually, the actual activity is seeing. You can't have a seer without seeing. You can't have a seen without seeing. So the mind
can. You said, I think earlier you said that you can't have. It's possible to seeing without labels. And one time I thought, I thought I noticed even, but maybe I just made it up. But I thought that the memory function didn't really work with just images. It only worked with images and labels. And somehow you couldn't recall if you didn't have a catalog number on your image. And maybe you're saying that because you're saying a scene exists without labels, but not necessarily does it go into the memory. It's not categorized or collected, or is it?
No. You can look. Let's say you go to an art gallery and you see an abstract painting by some famous artist. You stand and look at it for a while. Later on, you see the same painting in a catalogue somewhere. You recognize it. There's no labels there. You instantly recognize it because it's been seen before. It's been cognized.
Yeah, in a way, but in another way, like you did label it as an abstract painting that was yellow and blue and had horizontal lines. All those labels are there. You just don't know who the author is or whether it was acrylics or oils.
I'll let you hang on to that one. It's your baby.
I love that when you just made that very first metaphor of the chorus, and when you finish the chorus, because we're so used to applauding, right? And we make a big noise, and then we go, rah, bravo, bravo. But I guess musicians and also sportsmen call that in the zone, or at least sportsmen call that in the zone. And and it's something like presence.
Well, it's when the story of me is not there. There's no self-consciousness. There's no story going on. It's just pure activity. There's no one lost in it. It's just the functioning, whatever the pattern of energy is, whether it's a footballer or a baseball player or whatever, it's just pure activity. There's no referencing the self-image called me. And therefore the actual sportsman or whatever is flowing and without any sort of interruption. If you're constantly referring back to the self-image, like, oh, am I looking good? Is my hair right? Am I going to hit the ball properly? And blah, blah, blah. I don't know if you remember there was a book called Zen and the Art of Archery.
Oh, yeah, I remember the title. I don't believe I ever read it.
Yeah, it was written by a German, I think, who spent some time in Japan. And it was a very interesting book. It talks about how the master archer, he pulls back the arrow and he doesn't focus on the target. He actually lets go of all concepts, and then at the right moment he lets go, and usually the arrow goes right into the bullseye. But when you're really trying to get it, quite often it goes skew-whiff, as they say.
Right. I was actually just kind of like studying the inner game of golf. I'm not a golfer, but I was kind of like speaking with a coach, and I was actually doing some filming of some golfers, and we were kind of taking their game apart. And a lot of what we're talking about is division of attention, because we're told so often that we should be looking at the target, and what is the primary target? Of course, the target is what's happening now. I'm supposed to hit the golf ball. And people think, no, the target's the hole. I should be looking at the hole. And then if they think they're going to hit the hole because they have a preconception that, oh, my target is the hole, then the moment they hit it, they think, oh, it's not going toward the hole, see? And so there's all kinds of talking going on there. And then they think, darn it, where should that ball went in the water, and it should have been on the green, but it's in the water, so it really should have been in the water because they hit it in the water, right? And so then when you have a preconception and you're aiming too tight, like I'm aiming for the bullseye, then automatically your mind is an obedient servant. It's just saying, hey, you missed, and you went to the left. So the next shot is going to be kind of a little bit of you're going to put a little squinch of rightness in there to get it to the right, And so then that's what really screws your game up, is because somehow you think you know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's right. And all of those observations, split-second observation, you look where the target is. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You miss, okay, that's a split-second thing. The adjustment is made for the next shot or whatever. That is a split-second thing. And we don't realize that this body-mind organism has incredible capacity. If we take this story of me off, we all have talents that that maybe will never be realized because we're too busy putting energy into this consideration, always considering about me and my reputation, or will I get it right? Who cares? Just do it. I think there was a T-shirt.
There's a T-shirt like that, right?
Just
you see, now this is another conversation. We could call it a conversation for performance, because when you're a sportsman, when you're an ice skater or something like that, and if you do a twirl and you say, "Oh, my foot went wrong on that twirl, it probably didn't get 10 points," right away your next move is screwed, right? Because you're out of it, you're out of sync, and you can't just afford to do any of that kind of stuff. But so then we say, like, most of us are living in a place where we're always counter-thinking our every move, but we're not in a performance conversation. We're not, we're just here. We're just in the mundane. We're sitting in a room, and we're maybe waiting for an appointment, or we're waiting in half an hour we got to go to the store, but we're not on the edge anywhere, and so then we can't really notice. I don't believe we can really notice how far we're straying and how our mind is taking over this moment, because we're saying, well, this moment's nothing anyhow, I mean, it's just mundane here. Like, this is only life, right? I'm only alive now, so why? Who cares about that? I'm already alive. I don't need to have to gain that. I don't have to gain that or do anything about it. So then I'll just think about what my next move is. And that's kind of like, I don't know. So we were talking about a performance to see if we could model being on the edge, being in the zone. Why should we be in presence? I mean,
well, you can't get out of presence.
Yeah.
Only
your attention can.
Yeah.
Your attention goes wandering, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's an interesting thing called the razor's edge, which can be pretty nerve-wracking if you conceive that there's a razor's edge, which we call the present moment, and you try to be on that razor's edge. It can drive you absolute nuts. But if you relax and be what you are, just as you are, without referring to this image of self, then that razor's edge is actually the vastness of the universe.
Yeah.
And you can't fall off. You can't fall out of presence. You can't fall off the razor's edge. So it's some of these ideas or concepts are quite useful, but any concept, if it's held on to and fixated on, will become a prison.
Yeah. Even relaxing, because the razor's edge is a prison for sure. That's saying by effort I'm going to somehow stop all my wandering of my attention. Somehow I'm going to just stay right here, and it's because I've practiced for 15 years and I've learned how to concentrate, and I've learned how to I've disciplined myself, and all these things are not only like you said, every concept you have to leave go, and it'll be that one's useless from the very beginning, I think.
Well, it's interesting, about pointers. You know what pointers are?
Yeah, right.
The only value a pointer has got is in the moment of recognizing the truth of it. People worship pointers, oh, did you hear that pointer? But it only has value in the moment you recognize the truth of it. And then in that moment, the pointer loses any value because you now know the truth of it. It's yours. Nobody can take it from you. It's like when you see that there's no water in a mirage. Probably you were a young person when you first saw a mirage. And when you see that there's no water in the mirage, it's not that you actually do something. You might walk towards it and it just evaporates and you see, oh, there's no water there. You now know that a mirage doesn't have any water in it. You might get tricked a couple of times with the next one because they might look a little bit more sophisticated. But you're not going to believe in it. Whereas, people, so-called people, are full of beliefs. They believe in things that don't actually exist. And the only fact you can be absolutely certain of is your own existence. Everything else is conceptual. That's very, very poignant. The only fact you can be absolutely certain of is the fact of your own being. And what is that? That is this livingness right now. You may sense it as a pulse in the body or a sensation in the body, which only exists in the immediacy. And it's a very subtle sort of experience. But all experiences come and go. And the nature of the phenomena, the phenomenal universe, is change. It's constantly changing. So all these sensations that we have, which, infinite number of sensations, the breeze blowing on your skin, your headache or whatever's going on, it's all transitory. It's all coming and going. But that which doesn't change is indescribable. And it's that very fact you can't negate. You cannot negate the activity of knowing or the activity of being. And it's interesting, in the Bible it says, be still and know that I am that. I am that life force. I am that livingness. Anything else is a concept. So, if you really get the gist of that, it pulls the rug out from all of this, pulls the rug out from underneath all of these ideas of practices and methods. And in one instant, in a split second, you can be just what you are without any adornments or concepts. And isn't that what we call home? Isn't that what everybody's looking for? And they go looking in the mind, which is dualistic, and any conclusion you come to will immediately start to dissolve, and you start to look for another conclusion. Or so, it was interesting when I first went to see Sailor Bob Adamson. One of the first things he said in the first meeting I was there, he said, "What you're seeking, you already are." And it's like, how can that be? It's like the mind reacts and says, "Hang on, no, I'm looking for something, and I can't find it. I can't possibly be what I'm looking for." But the truth of what he says in that dawned on me a little later on, and of course, that which is looking for something. Like when I was 16, I used to hear the so-called grown-ups, people in their 20s, saying, "I'm going in search of my real self." And I was very perplexed because, hang on, I can see you. You're here. Where can you possibly find yourself? And it's this trick of the mind. You see, people talk, they have this, we talk about people, but it's common that people have this belief that they're on a sacred path and that they're on a sacred journey. But, a practical man would say to them, "Well, where is this path?" "Oh, well, it's an ephemeral thing. It's in their mind." And how can you walk on a path that's in your mind? you have to walk on it with imaginary legs.
Do we know exactly how much is in our mind and how much, that's kind of like my introduction, because I was saying the empirical point of view. You said you were a younger man, and some guys in their 20s said, I'm going to go seek who I really am. And you said, come on now, I think I see who you are. You were in the empirical point of view, and they were in the illusory point of view, where they were thinking, I'm not so sure this is true, or maybe something else is true, or is it an illusion, or what, and I've heard tell about this absolute, and kind of like my question is people can't really when their momentum is in what, I don't know, they're not really in there, but their attention is somehow has a momentum to it, and it's just used to working in concepts, right? And everything new is grasped as a concept anyhow, because how could we grasp it as an experience if we've never had it before? It's new. So then we take it on as a concept, and then we see, well, let it settle, and let's see where it goes. And so then, one of my questions often is should we be kind of speaking in the language of the receiver, or should we keep a kind of an attention on how things are being received? And if we're talking in absolute, and it's absolutely being taken as a concept, maybe we ought to kind of just have people take a look at concepts for a while and say, well, are they flexible? Are they malleable? Do they go this way and that way? I mean, and can you trust them always, or are they also moving? Because if concepts never moved, there would be nothing ever new, right? Because no science would ever grow or anything like that. And so then if we could just get them not try to tell them that nothing ever happened, or something that's kind of like, I don't really understand, but I mean, it could be right. Sometimes I get flashes of what that might mean. But I mean, certainly most people will say, well, this is irrelevant for me. And then, I don't know. I mean, we're not really trying to get a lot of numbers and stuff, but we're trying, if somehow something about this self-investigation can lead to a certain amount of freedom. Gosh, doesn't the planet need some freedom? I don't know. I mean, and then that's a compassionate thing to do, I think.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that psychological suffering is unnecessary, but the price that one needs to pay for that is to give up the idea that I'm a separate entity. I'm Gilbert. I'm me. It's not relevant to me. Of course, it's not relevant to me. But some people are through suffering, they want to escape that suffering, and they're drawn towards this message, and they've got no choice in that. They're absolutely no choice. It's the only way out of suffering, is to see that the fictional entity that is suffering is just a story that's being told. And
just a second, are we going to stay with, because you said psychological suffering, and so we're always talking about that now? I mean, for this moment, we're talking about psychological suffering, because I mean, I guess there's a lot of pain in the world that, goes deeper than psychological, but well, I try to steer away from it, to tell you the truth, but...
The thing about psychological pain is that it's a projection of the mind. And let's say you've got a toothache.
A projection or a prediction?
A projection.
Yeah, that's what I thought you meant.
Yeah. So, say you've got a toothache. Now, that's a physical thing. You can put your finger on it. You can make it worse. You can pinpoint where it is. But the resistance to that pain, instead of being with the pain and letting it be what it is, we try and resist it with this story. I don't want this pain. I want it to go away. And that's actually quite often more painful than the pain itself. And
well, it sure doesn't make it any better. I mean, it exacerbates it.
Yeah, that's right. It makes it worse.
Right.
And the thing is that it is a projection of the mind, because if you actually go into this, say you've got a knot in the guts, your girlfriend's upset you, or somebody's insulted you, and you've got a pain in the chest or lump in the throat or whatever. If you actually go into that with your attention, it vanishes, because it's actually psychological. It doesn't have a physical component. It feels very uncomfortable. It feels like it's real, but you can't pinpoint exactly where it is. If you've got a broken leg, you know exactly where the break is. But when you go looking for this reference point called me, who's suffering, which is projected as a physical pain, it's not really physical; it's psychological, and it's a resistance to what is. So there's no way out of that. And it can be excruciating. People, commit suicide because they can't take the pain anymore, not realizing that they're creating that excruciating pain with the story of me. And I mean, it sounds very simple. And you've got psychotherapists and all sorts of people who are patching up this story of me, and that's valid. There's nothing wrong with that. If it makes people feel better and able to cope, then there's nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't cure the problem.
You said something very interesting, because you said resistance to what's happening or what's real somehow creates pain. So then I suppose every resistance creates some modicum of pain. And so then we're constantly, soaking our body in pain.
Yeah.
As we resist it, and resistance too is kind of confusing, because like anytime we're saying we could fix this could get better, I guess that's a form of resistance. It seems a softer form, but it's kind of a dissatisfaction based, and we're trying to say like, oh, I better go out and do something about this, and we're taught that we can have a will and apply ourselves. And
yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing something about a pain. If you've got a headache, there's nothing wrong with taking some Panadol or Disprin or whatever you call it, aspirin. That's intelligent, isn't it? I mean, why not?
Yeah.
The intelligence that brought such chemicals into our realm of usage is intelligent. It's like all these wonderful things that go on in hospitals are intelligence in action. You can't say they're right or wrong.
Well, I think the real intelligence is to kind of be here and feel it. You take it and you see what is it doing to me, and is it something like it's losing its potency, like I have to take more and more and more, because otherwise we'd say it's intelligent to take drugs and to drink booze and everything else, right? But it's a kind of an intelligence. But if we just notice that, what happens without it, what happens with it, and then we can make our choice.
Yeah. Well, we do have a faculty called intuition, which is quite often not listened to. I think where there's so much noise going on, interference patterns and beliefs and all sorts of stuff going on, we rarely have a moment where the intuition can be really listened to. Maybe you've got a choice to make, and it's like a voice will say, oh, you should do that, and then another one says, no, you did that before and it's stuffed up. But beyond that, there's an intelligence which we call intuition, and it's a gut feeling. You know that something's right. This is what I need to do. And I think in this so-called modern world, where everyone is driving like a maniac on the road and late for an appointment and bip bip. I mean, when I go out into the streets with my car, I've often got people behind me bipping me, because I'm not a fast driver. I just drive however I feel is the appropriate thing. But I've noticed in the last year there's more and more people bipping me, and I've got grey hair, and maybe I'm getting too old for this game.
No, that grey hair is a good excuse. You can just go like this. See this hair? Give me a break. Here's one for you now, because we were talking like people are saying practices and so on, and that there's a long road to get to where we are right here. But then a moment ago you were saying that there's so much noise going on, and isn't it kind of helpful to have a moment of like a moment of pause? And so then a practice that would kind of, is there any kind of practice that would be valid that would kind of diminish the noise level?
Well, the thing is, are people willing to give up that? am I willing to give up this noise that's going on? And it's very simple. You just pause a thought. And in that pause, you see that there's actually nothing wrong. There's nothing right. There's nothing wrong. And this is a key to the whole shebang. But it's so simple, and it's so effortlessly brought about that we don't value it, because we believe in all these concepts, and you have to do this, you have to do that, and blah blah. But home is right here, right now. The only time there is now. You can't possibly get out of the now. You don't have to. What effort are you making to be what you truly are? Can you answer that?
Well, I think that's one of the greatest questions, what is effort and what is effortlessness? And, I'd even like to ask you that one, because effortlessness, I've experimented with that, and that's where I'm really attracted, because what good is it if it takes a lot of effort? Because sooner or later you're going to say, I've done that for a long time and I can't keep that up, I just want to be home. I don't want to be on a vacation far away, that I have to do all kinds of things. But
that's right.
What about effort? And what does effort mean anyhow? Why is there effort? Because we're saying that life is effortless. How can it be an effort to be me? I'm already me, and so then...
Well, effort is obviously energy moving, but the concept of someone making an effort is an interesting one. Everything is energy, appearing as patterns, objects, feelings, sensations, concepts, whatever, and that's spontaneously appearing. And in that spontaneous appearing, reference points arise. I am making an effort. I have to do this.
Right. But I mean, if spontaneously things arise, then it's also effortlessness is also movement, right? And energy moving, right?
It's all effortless.
No, come on, tell me now. How do we get to effort out of that?
By dropping the idea that you are a separate entity that's doing something. Like the Buddha said, according to Ramesh, who I went to see many years ago, events happen, deeds are done, there is no individual doer thereof. And that sort of cuts to it, really.
So that's effortless then. So then could we say that effort is our resistance and our belief that we have to break through our resistance? Because people have told us resistance is a no-no?
Well, I mean, I could philosophize about that, but it's very pertinent that one finds out for oneself. I mean, we have got all these teachers and gurus telling us what reality is and what they should do and what we should do and what da-da-da-da-da. But at some point in one's so-called journey, one needs to become 100% genuine and find out for yourself, because what we're talking about is not a mystery. The fact that you are, the fact that you don't have to make any effort to be what you truly are is highly significant. It undermines all these ideas of a future time, of achieving something or embodying the teaching, whatever that means. Learning how to live an awakened life. All of these are concepts, The fact is that no one ever woke up. That's just a concept. All there is wakefulness. And in this wakefulness, all these things appear, including this pattern of energy here, this body and the thoughts and all that. That's just appearing in the wakefulness. Now, the wakefulness is not owned by anyone. You don't have, when you wake up in the morning, you open your eyes, the wakefulness is there. You don't have to go down and turn the motor on and, kickstart put some petrol in the motor and get it going. It's there. It's there. It's always there. Even when you're asleep, the wakefulness is actually there, but there's nothing registering except maybe some dreams. So when you really, really see that there's no entity here, there's a beautiful relief when you recognize that life is all there is. It's all life. There's nothing wrong. It doesn't matter how it expresses itself, and there's nothing you can do about it anyway. You know, all of the so-called good things and bad things are just life expressing itself. I think Shakespeare said there's nothing right or wrong, but thinking makes it so. You know, we think something is wrong, and therefore it's wrong. You've probably heard the story of the wish-fulfilling tree. Have you?
No, I don't know if I have.
Well, there's a man in the desert, walking in the desert. He's thirsty, and he sees this tree and the shade of the tree, and he goes and sits under it. And he's sitting there, and he says, "Oh, this is good. I wish I had a cold drink." And then suddenly there's a cold drink in his hand. And he's drinking the cold drink. He says, "Oh, this is pretty good. I wish I had a nice meal." Suddenly there's a meal. And he's hurrying into the meal. And he says, "This is pretty good. I wish I had a nice maiden to fan me with a cool breeze." And suddenly there's a maiden there with a big leaf fanning him. And he's really enjoying this. And he thinks, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Maybe it's the devil. Bang, there's the devil. And he thinks, maybe he's going to eat me. And he does.
God, maybe so many people say your thoughts just manifest, right? Of course, your thoughts, I don't know where your thoughts are, or if we don't notice our thoughts, probably.
Well, if I gave you a stopwatch, if I gave you the best stopwatch in the world, $2 million stopwatch, and I said, okay, I want you to measure the duration of a thought. Okay, you got the stopwatch. You can't do it. A thought appears and disappears in an instant. You cannot measure the duration because it doesn't have any duration. It's timeless. And yet we beat ourselves up with these concepts and thoughts. I'm not good enough. I'll never amount to anything. I'm just no good. I'm a bad man. I should be put away.
Yeah, those ones are timeless. They hang around for 60 years, right?
Yeah. But it's interesting, I think one of the Buddhist sayings is that the true nature of all phenomena, and the operative word is all, the true nature of all phenomena is emptiness. And one can recognize that. If you recognize the emptiness of your thoughts, how can you beat yourself up with it? And who are you going to beat up anyway?
I'm not sure I'm grasping that one, I mean, I've heard a lot of advice like don't personalize or nothing's personal, and then I've heard people talk about, I don't know, the river of collective consciousness or something like that we're all in, so then it's not me, really. They talk about family constellation work, that where same kind of emotional content comes up for generations or culture.
Yeah, that's the pattern. The thing is, the pattern, you know what a pattern is?
Yeah.
It's a tablecloth with a repeating pattern. The pattern is a repetition. So in the appearance, there are many, many patterns seemingly repeating themselves. Even the solar system is a pattern that repeats itself. But it only exists in the immediacy, and the immediate present is eternity. When they talk about eternal life, this is it. You cannot find a beginning to this moment. You cannot find an end to this moment. And that's pretty significant for no one.
Aren't patterns always what the mind is all about? In other words, if the mind is like, if our thought mechanism is a protection, and it's given the duty to try to find some patterns and see if they go in the future too, and then if there's any dangerous ones, you'll know what to do, right? And so then those patterns, a lot of times we're looking through the pattern to see the pattern, and so it seems to appear everywhere we look. There's that pattern again. People hate me, and I hate them back. Yeah,
that's right.
And those kind of patterns is just the job of the mind, really. And so we really making them all up, because in this moment, of course, there's no pattern. There's just what is.
That's right. Yeah, what you're seeing is no thing. And because there's a history where you've learnt what all these patterns are, you recognize them instantly. But if you came into existence right now, just as you are, with no memory, no words, you'd still see the immediate reality of this appearance. You wouldn't have any names for it.
No names, and I wouldn't have any patterns, and I would just kind of have like a curiosity of a child saying, oh boy, what's that? This is sparkly, Or I wouldn't even say this is sparkly, but I would just go toward the sparkles, I suppose. I don't know, or whatever seemed to be most intense.
That's what we love about you, Richard.
Yeah? Well, you're sparkling quite a bit, so I'm going for it.
It's all good.
Right.
Except for the bad bits.
Sometimes it seems like, in the beginning we weren't supposed to look anywhere, because we're supposed to be sincere. So sincere means we're going to go see a teacher or something like that, or kind of and look inside and be introspective and say, well, this teaching's about me or about my inquiry. It's not about what the other guys are doing. And it's not an entertainment, or it's not really, it's not something to make judgments and figure out.
Yeah.
Somehow I've seen so many people, because I get to talking to a lot, and then we used to do a lot of webcasting too, and then sometimes I'm taping satsangs, and then I'm into editing them too, so I see them second, third, fourth time. And it seems like a certain amount of people can get stuck in parts of this teaching. I call it stuck because it seems to last a long time, where they kind of deny the importance of things that happen in the world and say, well, that's basically that's their problem, but I'm in peace, They find that, they find that openness and that spaciousness, and then somehow that, I don't know, maybe they have a hocus pocus belief that's, the more you stay in spaciousness, the more the world starts to work. And I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you can recognize, it's possible to recognize that the world is the mind. You can't separate the world from the mind, because they're the same thing. And their appearance, they're what we call the appearance. It's the nama rupa, the name and form. But its true nature is emptiness. And we get caught up with the name and form. So the journey home, you don't even have to take one step. You drop all your concepts. If anyone was to give a little bit of time to just dropping their concepts on a regular basis, then a lot of these problems would dissolve by themselves. And if you look at, you've heard of Nisargadatta, obviously.
Yes, I have.
In the beginning of I Am That, he gives an account of the instruction that his guru, Siddha Rameshwar, gave to him. And his instruction was, stay with that I am, that sense of presence. And Nisargadatta says he gave every spare moment to that. And within the space of 3 years, it was finished. And you can throw the book away if you get the real gist of that. That worked for him, it can work for anyone. And how simple is it? Just stay with that presence, that awareness of being present. Drop your concepts. Now, anyone, I challenge anyone, anywhere, to do that for 5 minutes every day, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. The belief in this entity will dissipate. It will dissolve, because in those moments of non-conceptual awareness, one really gets a taste of the true nature, our true nature. It's not in concepts. It's not in the mind. You know, like Bob says, the answer is not in the mind. So why go there looking for it? But of course, that's what everybody does. They go looking in the mind, and it's dualistic. Whereas the non-dual is pure awareness, pure being. And it's not my being and your being. It's being with a capital B. It's all being. It's cosmic consciousness, which is all-inclusive. And every pattern that's appearing in this cosmic consciousness is totally valid, just the way it is. And there's no need for psychological suffering if you recognize your true nature. And it's so simple. It's so simple. It's just unbelievable that there's so much nonsense around about spirituality. It's so simple. But, you know, it seems that not many people want to hear about it. But who cares? I think you do.
I care, yeah. And I think the people do, you know, and something puts them off. And then I'm not so sure. I think the things that you said, even from the very beginning, the first thing you said when have you ever been in a chorus? And what happens at the end of the song? Right away, that's a grabber right there. That's very, very potent. And it makes me want to not applaud anymore, you know. And don't wreck it, you know, because I want to see it. I want to feel it, right?
Yeah.
And then we're talking about psychological suffering, because you said that again, you know, and then we said there is a physical suffering, or there is pain in the world. And, you know, maybe it looks like we can activate our bodies and our minds and make a program, make a plan, and help people that are in our face here, in our life, you know. I kind of just, let me share this, because I just had a realization a couple of days ago that, what is it like? Well, how should I say it? Maybe I'll just say like this, you know, one time I lived in Utah, and they got a lot of mountains. They're real close to Salt Lake. And I used to climb up there. And then on the top, you know, it was kind of cool. We were at almost 12,000 feet. And then there's a talus slope, and then there's some cliffs. And, of course, I would not go anywhere on that slope because, you know, it's just like loose rock and stuff. And some young kids, I mean, I guess they were used to it, or somehow they would scamper down there, and they'd actually find some ledges on the cliff and go walking around on it. And I don't know how far down it was, but it was enough that you would be a sure goner. And so then I started to adopt this. You know, I would never go there. You know, oh, are you kidding? And so then I was in Europe. And the first time I was in Europe, there was the Israeli war, and so then I didn't go there. You know, I was thinking of taking a motorcycle and kind of going around through Africa and stuff, and I didn't want to take that trip down or go anywhere near. I was in Europe a long time. I never went to Ireland, you know, because I thought, you know, they're warring there. What do I need it for? And so then I realized that I adopted a belief that in personal destiny and destiny and personal karma was a way to ensure that I was separate and say that, okay, I don't have any pain in my life, so it must be my good karma, you know, not that I was rewarded or anything, but I did, you know, I was just kind of like I was chicken. I didn't want to be in a place that was risky, you know, I mean, so I adopted this belief, and separation was handy for me. And so I'm just saying that it's easy to just think that I'm for everybody and think that I'm for oneness and all that, but in the same thing, my fear is taking me away from a lot of people and a lot of problems that maybe I could do something for, maybe, just by having this show and saying this, I lay it on the table, right? And already I'm adding my energy to the well-being of people. I want them, I want the Egyptians to have a great government and freedom, not like our freedom, just how they need it. And I want the Middle East to be resolved, and every other thing, right?
Yeah. Can I relieve your suffering?
Yeah, please.
Well, it can't be any other way than it is. However it's manifesting and expressing itself, it cannot be. Not even one atom can be displaced from the way it is. And it's a beautiful expression. All the different, the diversity of the entire manifestation is a beautiful expression. And there's nothing wrong with it. We judge it and say, no, that shouldn't happen, blah, blah, blah. But the fact is, it is happening, or it's appearing to happen. And there's no need to worry. I mean, if you've taken a different course on one of your decisions earlier of not to go to a place, if you'd gone somewhere, you may not be here right now.
That's correct.
Thank God you're here. Otherwise, I'll be talking to my computer.
Yeah, right.
And I don't like the concepts my computer has, so I'd much prefer to talk to you.
Yeah, my concepts are
but
good ones.
It can't be any other way than it is, and it's just appearance anyway.
No, but I'm not bitching about it. But I'm just saying that it can't be any other way than it is that I'm involving myself in something.
Yeah, that's right. Are you involving yourself in something?
Well, I do never not here.
It appears to be.
Yeah, well, okay, it's not me or whatever it is. I'm the channel, or I mean, it's just it's always around me. I mean, somehow there's a there's a.
But how is that separate from cosmic consciousness?
No, I don't have to separate that. I don't have to say it is separate, and I don't maybe I don't even have to say it's the same either. Because both one can be taken as a concept. It's the same.
Yep.
The belief in separation is a concept, and the belief in no separation is a concept.
Yeah. You know what Ramana Maharshi said about concepts?
What did he say?
He says, you take one thorn, you've got a thorn in your hand, you get another thorn and you remove the first thorn, then he says you throw them both away.
Right on.
And it's a metaphor for concepts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you use one concept to remove another concept, and then you throw them both away because you don't need them anymore.
Well, you mentioned Ramesh and Balsakar, and so he was always saying in my concept, or he would always, really be right up front, like, and what I say is a concept, Of
course.
Or he would talk about, now I'm replacing your conditioning with current conditioning, so this is your current conditioning, He was really upfront about it, He never said, I'm telling you the truth.
No, that's right. Well, he was an investor.
Oh, yeah. So then, right.
Yeah. God bless his soul.
Sometimes I talk about freedom. And so then I suppose that's, in a way, I just think it's, I think what I'm saying when I say that is that it's letting go of anything that could bind, and whatever can bind it must be a concept. It's an idea that something's binding. But even the idea of freedom maybe is a concept, because I'm saying freedom from what? I'm proposing there's a what there that I need to be free from.
Yeah. Well, freedom from is similar to awareness of. Awareness of something implies that there's something separate from something else that's aware of something, but the incisive insight is awareness is self-aware. It doesn't need an agent. It's like in the Bible, I think it says, let no man come between you and your God. That's a non-dual pointer. You are God. don't let any man with his concepts come and try and divide that, or your own mind. There's only one life, and that's this life now, and it's the most intimate experiencing that one can have is this life, and we hang on to it. We love life. Nobody really wants to lose life, and there's no need to be fearful of losing it because it's eternal, and it appears as all of these different patterns. So when you realize your true nature, there's no fear of death anymore, because life is eternity. It's here now. Like Jesus said, the kingdom is within you and without you, but you see it not. Of course you can't see it. It's like space. God is space, and everyone misses it. It's everywhere. It's everything. It embraces everything. God is space. How can people fight a war in the name of God? One side will say God's on my side, and the other will say no, God's on my side. And as Bob pointed out to me, he said nobody ever says, I'm on God's side. If they all said that, there'd be no war.
They'd be on the side of space, right?
That's right. You can't get out of space.
But you can give it, right? I could give you space,
Yeah, I've got it. Thank you. I'll put it over here.
Well, at least I'm not trying to snatch it, I'm thinking I could get it.
I was interesting. On the Urban Guru Cafe, there's a program of Nisargadatta. I had some tapes of his meetings. And there was a young man who was coming for several days, and he was very earnest, and he eventually asked the question, how come I exist? And Nisargadatta says, through the interpreter, he says, how did the space come into this room? He said, didn't come into the room. Something is building the house in the space. So we get everything back to front, Something is building the house in the space. In other words, there's some activity of energy creating this pattern called the universe, patterns within patterns within patterns. We can never know what that is, but we can know the life force that is right here, right now. And that's the most intimate thing. You can call that God if you want. Something is building the house in the space.
So that doesn't even take energy, does it? I mean, like, the space is not energy and awareness. I don't know if it's an energy. I mean, it seems to take energy to hook it to a body, but I'm not so sure. Yeah. It's not. It's not movement, so it doesn't need energy.
It's nothing. It's nothing. But it's the potentiality. The pure potentiality of nothing is everything. Out of nothing appears everything, and it disappears back into the nothing. But how can something come out of nothing? Whatever comes out of nothing must be made of nothing. So that's why the Buddhists say the true nature of all phenomena is emptiness. So when you go looking for your true nature, what you will find is emptiness. And if you look at what the Buddha discovered, take away all the Buddhism and all the books and all, 100 new books written every week about Buddhism. But look at what, as the story goes, he discovered that there is no self. Emptiness. Cognizing what is. That's what you are. How beautiful.
The greatest part of it, it's really a light load, There's nothing to carry.
That's right. It's a light load. In Egypt, there's one of the paintings on one of the temple walls. It's the weighing of the soul. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. there's this wall sculpture or whatever they call them, hieroglyphs, and there's a scale, and on the scale is a feather, and on the other scale is the heart of the one who's just died, and below the heart is a crocodile, and above the feather is a bird in flight. So if the heart is heavier than the feather, it will be fed to the crocodile.
It rolls off. It rolls off the scale.
That's right. And if it's lighter than a feather, the spirit is set free. It's a beautiful picture, you know. How heavy is your heart right now? How heavy is your spirit? That's the direction to go in, obviously.
Really, that's something I think you can be aware of. I really feel like I can be aware of, like, how much I'm dragging myself and how much I'm setting myself free. And that's all it takes. I mean, that would be like the guidepost or the signpost to what? To be here now, I guess.
Yeah. We're always at the crossroads. If you go that way, there's hell. If you go that way, it's heaven.
I love it. We're always at the crossroads. This is really good, you know. Like our intention or something like right. Choose God, right? They say that in the Bible, I think.
Transcend both.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the Mahabharata.
Well, what do you mean, seeing the book or?
No, there's a televised version by Peter Brook.
No, I haven't seen it.
There's a beautiful scene at the end. Have a look at it sometime, because one of the characters, he gets taken to heaven and then he gets taken to hell, and then the storyteller comes and taps him on the shoulder because he's looking very depressed when he's in hell, with the stench of rotting flesh and voices and no communication. And he taps him on his shoulder and he says, "Both of them are illusion. Heaven and hell are illusion. They're the polar opposites of the mind. Who lives in heaven? God. Who lives in hell? The devil. And we oscillate between hope and despair. And we don't need to. Come back to the pivot point of the seesaw, the stillness of the mind, and see that there is no mind without thought. The gates open. The no gates. The non-gate.
Gilbert, I really thank you. You're really, really a lot of fun to be with, and really, really just uplifting.
Some people think the opposite. Yes.
Maybe I was even afraid. I don't know, you know, but I sure proved them wrong. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. I enjoyed it very much.
Yes. And everybody, you've seen Gilbert Schultz, and I hope we're going to see a lot more of him. So thanks for watching, and thanks for being here, and come again soon, and come again often. I thank you.
Bye.